Good morning YouTube and welcome back to the channel and Project E46 M3. For the regular subscribers, you'll know I am constantly tinkering with this car, and for the new ones, well, welcome. My name's James Stone and today I'm going to run you through how to change the coolant and the thermostat on an E46 M3. So the purpose for changing the thermostat today, for those again who are regular subscribers, you might have seen in one of the last videos I mentioned that the coolant temperature was just fluctuating. It was knocking back from the middle back towards the first dot again, which some will say is completely normal because it's within the tolerance that it's allowed to run. But for me, it shouldn't move. It should say dead at 12 o'clock. Once it's up to temperature and you're driving along, and that for me from past experience with the motorbikes with the E92 M3 has always been a faulty thermostat. So in today's video we're going to drain the coolant, put the new thermostat in, and hopefully that will bring that needle back to perfect operating temperature when driving. Hopefully this guide will help a few of you out. As I say, it is followed at your own risk. I'm not a BMW trained technician, so there may be processes or steps that I haven't done correctly, but as hopefully you can see in this video, it's worked. We completed the change yesterday, everything bled up fine, awesome. What I will obviously go through is what a thermostat does. For those of you that don't know, essentially it's a valve in the cooling system in very basic terms. And what happens is these cars are designed to run in very hot climates where it can be 40, 50 degrees. And they're also designed to run in very cold climates, which is not freezing in the UK, but definitely on the colder side. And what that thermostat does is it stops all the coolant running around the radiator until it's up to temperature, and then if the temperature does drop down, the thermostat will close, keeping more of the heat in the block than letting it run out the radiator. The problem is when they fail on these cars, they generally stick open, which means even though the engine's not completely up to operating temperature, the thermostat goes soft, it starts to open, lets the coolant run through, essentially overcooling the engine. And that's not great because it can affect fuel economy. You can run the engine slightly cold, especially as we found out with the E92 M3. It was running about 15-20 degrees too low on the coolant temperature, which isn't something I've experienced as much in this car, but it's certainly something I wanted to change to keep everything in top working order. With the car securely put in the air, you now need to remove the undershield, and it's just got 7 little 8mm headed bolts. So you've got 3 that run across the back and 2 either side here. And once that's off, the whole tray can then just be lowered down. I've got a little 8mm socket on an impact gun, makes life much faster. And we'll get that off now and expose the underneath. Okay, so under the car, not a great deal of access on the floor. You can see my anti-roll bar, and unfortunately where the powder coat is split, you've got the air compressor aircon compressor even straight up in front of you here. If you look just over to the back behind this canister, and I don't think my phone's going to be able to show it, but basically on top of that nut that you can see there is the drain plug, not that nut I'm pointing at, behind it. So let me show you now. Apologies again for the light, but if you take a 13mm socket and an extension bar and go up and above, it's just behind there, and you should feel it. Let's see if that will stay in position. That falls on my face. So you can now see the extension is resting on that nut and the 13mm behind it. When you undo that, coolant is going to go absolutely everywhere. So get a drain tray, make sure you're not on anywhere that you're worried about getting the floor stained. You could lay cardboard down to soak it up, but I'll put the drain tray there and I'll get the hose out to sort of wash away any little bits that do spill, but we'll try and catch most of it, as the last thing you want is that running all over the floor. At this stage, I still haven't undone that 13mm nut to drain the block. We're actually going to start working on stripping the top down and then do all the drains at once. So ideally, you want to remove the lower coolant hose, but from reading online, a lot have said it can be brittle, there are issues removing it. It's better just to remove the temperature sensor on the top there. But we've got to get rid of all the shroud on the left-hand side. And if you haven't got a CSL airbox like me, you're going to have to remove the duct and the top part of the airbox. So thankfully, with the CSL intake, for once, other than the cost, there's a big advantage for doing a coolant change. With the coolant sensor unplugged, you now need to actually remove it from the line, and there's these two little, let's see if we can get that focused, two little tabs just either side that you've got to squeeze in, and then once you pull that out, coolant's going to go everywhere. That's why I've got the drain tub underneath, and then we're going to undo that 13mm on the back of the block, undo the cap, undo the bleed screw, which we'll come back to, and turn on the ignition and put the heaters on. Back in the garage, I've given the sensor a quick wipe down to remove that crud from the end and just visually inspected the sealing O-ring, because if there is any splits in it, it's going to need to be replaced because you are going to get a coolant leak. But everything thankfully all came out on this one with no issues, so we can then put that to one side, ready to go back in the car when we're filling it back up shortly. With the expansion cap removed, the temperature sensor out and the coolant flow pretty much stopped, and the bleed screw out at the top of the radiator hose, we can now go underneath the car and undo that 13mm nut to do the block drain. Now the reason I saved this for last is it is really messy, and at least this way we've got most of the coolant out before having it all splash on us, so we'll do that now. So back in the garage, as you can see, we have the temperature sensor, which we've removed and cleaned up, the expansion tank cap, the bleed point off the top of the radiator hose, and the block drain plug as well. And I'm sure a few of you found that interesting or exciting to watch, as that absolutely decorated me in coolant on my left arm. So that's why I was way back by the wheel when I was doing it, because I knew it was going to spray out of there, even though we'd removed a lot of it through the temperature sensor. So you can buy these from BMW. I will double check it and put in the description if I've got the part number, but I'm just going to use a generic washer that I've got in a kit, and I believe it's a 14mm diameter. As can be seen, it was a 14mm bolt, and I have a 14mm washer to go on there, a brand new one in my box of random washers and bolts. So the good news is, haven't had to go to BMW for that, but obviously you can buy it from BMW if you need a replacement. It's certainly worth doing at the time, because if you get a leak on it, you're gonna have to replace all of the coolant again. So what we now need to do is go into the car, turn the ignition on, put the temperature to maximum hot, low fan speed, and this will open up all the heater matrix lines behind the dash so that we can fill it and bleed it correctly. Now, if you're just doing a coolant replacement change, you can move to the next chapter in the video, which is detailed, but the thermostat is inside here, which we'll be removing now to replace. As you can see, the thermostat is out, and this looks like it's the original unit. It looks like a build date of April 2003. So yeah, it's certainly very old. If you are obviously relying on the car daily, it is worth ordering these O-rings as well. As when I did the E92, they were fine, didn't need to replace them. These look fine as well, but I'll do a quick check off camera, because if they are split, you are going to get a leak. So for the cost of it, it's probably worth ordering them. I wasn't aware of it when I did it, so I haven't, so I just need to double check they're all okay. But essentially now it's just refitting the new one and put it all back together. With the two thermostats side by side, they look identical. They've got the same branding in them, different production date, which is obviously with my new one being a newer model. But hopefully this will make sure that the water temperatures stay nice and stable, rather than that needle just rocking back every now and then. It never went back to cold, but it certainly shouldn't be like that, especially after I replaced the one in the E92 M3, and it was night and day difference on the warm-up times. So let's get that all back in the car. With the thermostat housing back together and the Jubilee clip done up, you can now go back down to the underside and put in the drain plug, and we've got to put back in the temperature sensor. With the temperature sensor and the block drain plug back in, it's now time to top the car up with new antifreeze. Now the stuff from BMW requires a 50-50 ratio, so half antifreeze, half deionized water. So I've got a bottle here. I'm going to pour the first 1.5 litres straight in from the bottle, and then I'll use this to top that up to 1.5 litres, put that in the system, and then I can actually just use that bottle as a measuring jug for the rest of it. So once the engine turns over, it'll all be mixed together properly anyway. As you hopefully saw there, we continued filling the coolant into the tank, and then as soon as it started running out of the bleed point, I put the screw back in there. I've kept topping it up, and now you can see that the level is just on. I imagine it's going to drop a bit when we start it up, but we need to obviously put the car back together, put it on the ground, leave it running with the heaters on, and you need to watch that temperature gauge like a hawk, because the last thing you want to do is have an airlock, miss it, and then obviously overheat the engine. But we'll put the car back together now and then start it up. Now sat inside the car, we're going to start it up. I'm going to leave it idling for 15-20 seconds just to get a bit of oil around the motor, and then I'm going to hold the RPM at about 2,500 with that heater on, maximum hot temperature, low fan speed. So while you're waiting for that, you should see the temperature gauge start to increase. If it fluctuates a little bit, it's not a problem. It might be moving air through the system. If you get the warning light on the left for the expansion tank low, it's like a yellow symbol with some ripples through it to indicate that the coolant level's low. Stop the test, let the car cool down, open the expansion tank, check the level, top it up. You've got a leak or a big airlock. So during this test, I never want to see it go past that second dot. Hopefully you can see that there. It should stay in that first half, in between the two dots. If you go past that dot, it's getting too hot. I've never seen it reach there ever in the previous changes I've done with it. So we'll fire that up now, give it a couple of seconds to get some oil around the block, and then hold it at 2,500 RPM until we get up to temperature. And hopefully that temperature needle will sit dead straight. And once we let the car cool back down again, we check the level on the expansion tank in the engine bay, and that's the coolant change done. And that is a wrap on the coolant change. We've got no warning light on the left to say the expansion tank is low, the engine oil is up to temperature, coolant temperature is bang on in the middle, and like I say, this is exactly what you want to see. It didn't really have any fluctuation getting up to temperature, but ready to go for MOT. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, consider subscribing. Plenty to come. Well, I say plenty to come. The E46 is always nearly done, but I'm sure there'll be many more videos on the E46 in the coming months.